Welcome to the Engineer Your Success podcast. My name is Dr. James Bryant, your host for the show. And here is where we help leaders design a life where they can win at work and at home. Today's guest is Russ Spiegel, Vice President of Operations at Craftsman Electric, and he is a seasoned executive with a remarkable leadership journey. Russ has led in both the military and in business, serving as a U.S. Marine Corps Battalion Commander before moving into executive leadership roles in construction and skilled trades industries. Across his career, Russ has led to one simple truth. The most important investment anyone can make is in their people. He has a passion for helping people become the best versions of themselves, turning challenges into opportunities and building cultures that honor both the field and office staff equally. Russ, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, James. Looking forward to the conversation today. Been a big fan of yours. Heard a few of your podcasts, and doing good stuff here, man.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. As I mentioned in the intro and on your LinkedIn profile, your headline has that quote, the most important investment anyone can make is in their people. So let's talk about what led you to that belief.
You talked a little bit about my background. I was active duty Marine Corps officer, an infantry officer for 21 years. You learn very early on that truly the most valuable resources that you have were your Marines. And as a infantry platoon commander, you don't have a lot of stuff. You got some weapons, but what you do have is you have 42 United States Marines that you're responsible for. So you quickly figure out that it is not about you, it's about them. And if you're going to accomplish anything, particularly accomplishing the mission that you're assigning, it's all about what those guys are going to do. So you have to invest in them, and you realize that they can do anything with the proper leadership. For me, that was 24-year-old Russ experiencing leadership, and it's all about the people. And that's made me think about that since I've been a young adult.
You've been growing in your practice of this since a young adult. What does helping people be the best version of themselves look like in practice?
So that's an interesting one, because I do believe that when you are challenging somebody to become the best version of themselves, sometimes you're going to have to do the old adage of showing us some tough love, which means accountability. None of us would be where we are today as far as successful in our lives without somebody holding us accountable at some point in time. And once you learn that, you start understanding that you have to do that to others. And when it's being done, it's not done because they like to tell you what to do or like to give you deadlines, but it makes you grow. And the only way to get better is getting uncomfortable. And that is what I think allows people to become the best version of themselves. It's when they have an event that pulls them out of the comfort zone and starts to make them grow and become better. And we have to all do that on a daily basis. And I think that's, as a leader, one of the most critical things that you bring.
One of the other things that you've mentioned in our pre-talk and even looking through your profile is this whole concept of turning challenges into opportunities. So can you share a story of even the origin of that and how that has played out?
Everything in life comes down to your mindset. What do you bring in upstairs? And I used to tell in my prior role at a Most Group, an athletic field construction company. And when I was talking to our folks that were joining the company for the first time, particularly that was going to the field operations side of it, I would ask them, what's the most important measurement out there? They start to think about the measurement of a goalpost or the measurement of the end zone. I'm like, 6 inches. The 6 inches between is the most important thing out there. And if we get that right mindset going, we're unstoppable. So that's what challenges opportunities is. It's a mindset. No matter what happens, you can make it better. And you can always find truly the silver lining in any cloud. Now, I'd be lying to say that that's how I've always felt and always thought. That's a mature mindset that, quite honestly, takes years. But it comes back to that. Am I a victim? Do things happen to me, or do things happen that I can influence through my activities and, most importantly, my response to them? That's my breakdown channels opportunities. Multiple times in my career, from the Marine Corps to the business world, that has happened. And when you start talking like that to people, they look at you like you're weird. What's wrong with you? Okay, things are falling apart. You're sitting there completely calm and nothing is going on. Again, we can react two ways. We can either run around worried and upset that the world is on fire, or we can take a step back, take a breath, look at it, and say, this isn't good, but here's what we're going to do about that.
I can see how that would be particularly useful when you're leading by example, when everybody knows that these day-to-day issues or these fires or these things that are urgent that are coming towards you, and they see you as the leader being able to approach that with a clear head, not necessarily panicking, but keeping, yes, we have to take care of these day-to-day issues, but also having that bigger strategic picture in view. How do you help your leaders, the people that you manage, the people that are under you, how do you help them take on that same type of mindset?
That's a skill that takes some time to develop, because there's leading, then there's leading leaders. And to your point, it's a little different how you approach that. When you're talking about people development and leading leaders, one of the biggest pieces, you already hit on a little bit, you talk about leading by example. And I think of leading by example, one of the most critical aspects of that is emotional discipline. You can't let the highs be too high and the lows be too lows. What you've got to do is you got to control your emotions when something comes in. And people start to see that over time. I think what that does is, number one, it sets a tone across your organization, right? Because really what you're doing is you're keeping things in perspective. And I know that is, again, where you're at, your leadership journey, keeping it perspective, it's all relevant. But what I would say is that when people know that they come to you with no matter what's going on, and you're going to calmly ask them about it, what should we do about this? People start coming to you with not just the problems, but then with solutions to those problems. And they just want to run it by you just to get your input and buy-in. There can never be a time when someone says, hey, what kind of mood is the boss in today? What am I going to get? And I think that ties back into emotional discipline, keeping things in perspective, and consistency. If people know consistently what they're going to get back from the leader, that allows them on how they're going to approach them with these challenges. If they know you see challenge as an opportunity, they start to think like that. So it starts to become a culture that's really a mindset that, to me, that's one of the key things a leader is responsible for, establishing that mindset and culture.
Talking about culture, I know, I think in your current role, you are leading an organization where you have both office and staff and field crews. Sometimes they feel like they're in two different cultures or organizations. How do you bridge that gap or make sure both sides feel part of a unified unit?
Mm-hmm. Here at Craftsman Electric, we've got about 110 people. Roughly 80 to 85 are field employees. They're guys and gals that are out there, turning the wrenches, climbing the ladders, pulling the wire. they're making it happen. Then you have this other piece that is back in the office that's supporting that and making sure that they have what they need. So the question is, how do you make sure that each one of them recognizes the value in what the other is providing? I think honestly, the recognition of what's happening in the field is actually the easy part, because people see it. They know these young men and women are out there. It's hot, it's cold, they're tired, they're hungry. People know what's happening. I think a lot of times what can happen is that people then lose perspective about the folks that are in the office, that are running the payroll, that are doing the accounting activities, that are making sure that the equipment that is rented shows up on time. Like all that stuff goes unnoticed. It's about one team, right? Not just the guys that are in the field, not just about the folks that are in the office. It's about how do we accomplish something as a team. We just had, it's funny you say that, we just had Fridays, our leadership team meets every Friday morning. And we had that discussion this morning specifically about, we've got estimating, we've got our accounting team, we've got our project managers, general superintendents, market, sales, and how each one of them is completely dependent upon each other for success. And that's really, it's all about team building, right? As a leader, one of the critical things you do is build a team. Because if you're just doing it by yourself, you're not going to go very far. But you have to have a team that has mutual respect for what's going on in the field, for what's going on back in the office. And I think when you can get those two things in sync, particularly in a heavy blue-collar industry like ours, you become a force to reckon with.
What suggestions would you have for a leader or organization trying to grow in that area of us all being one team?
That starts at the top with the leaders making sure they have a mutual respect for every single person in that organization and what they're doing. You can become, as a leader, a little bit of the ivory tower, aloof. You're thinking about the big picture strategy, key customers, and that's important. But just as important is making time out of your day to get out into those projects and visiting and finding out what's going on, right? Having a kneecap to kneecap conversation when you sit down and have a discussion with a 20-year-old apprentice that's only been here for 6 months. And like, how are you doing? You're getting everything you need? How are you being treated? What's your background? Where did you go to high school? What do you do in your free time? People feel that. It becomes, they can tell whether that's genuine or if you're out there checking a box. But when people feel that, they now have a genuine connection. That's one of the critical ways leaders bridge the gap between what's going on in the strategic view of the organization all the way out to what we would say in the Marine Corps at pointing into the spear. Your young Marines, what are they doing? And I tell you, where I learned that the most at was probably in the Marine Corps during my combat tours in Iraq, a term called battlefield circulation. You've got folks out there alone and unafraid, facing the enemy, and they're at the point of the spear. And the leadership, battalion commanders, company commanders, regimental commanders, they've got to get out forward, and they've got to be able to see with their own eyes. Because once you go there personally, you can feel what's going on, right? You have that emotional intelligence kicks in. You can just tell. I would argue that you show up, whether I show up to a project site or whether I would show up to a fighting hole in the desert, you just can get a sense of the morale. You get a sense of how everybody is doing. And you physically get to see how they're living. How are they keeping the job site clean? Are they keeping their weapons clean? It's two different worlds. Leadership by making sure that you're getting out there, seeing what's going on with your own eyes, bridging that gap. in the office itself. How often do those leaders walk out of their office, walk down the hall, and go in and see what's going on with the APAR accounting specialist? What are you working on today? What can I help you with? What do you need from me? Right? I can't do accounting, but I can make sure you have the resources you need. If you have conflict and you need reprioritization, I can help you. That's what a leader has to do. You can't get that through just meetings or just through reading emails. You get that by physically going out there and having that interaction. And I think, again, people can tell you're genuine, and that's a big reason how they start to connect with that.
I absolutely agree with you. Leaders being able to have those kneecap to kneecap conversations or face to face, going into managing by walking around, but not just managing. I think I would even take that a step further and say connecting by walking around, because in reality, you can't manage people like you manage projects. You lead people, you connect with people. And so maybe we'll call that connecting by walking around. But what you're doing is you're creating that point of connection, that point of relation, so that you can bridge the gap to understand how can you create a path for their success. What do I need to do as a leader to move things out of the way so that you can be successful?
That's right. When you're meeting with a team member, whether it's their office or their desk out on the project site, you're on their turf, right? And that disarms them to the point to where they feel like maybe saying some things they wouldn't say in a formal setting, right? And then, so you get that, you become accessible as a leader. And what that gives you is that gives you real intel about what's going on. Nothing's sugar-coated. It's coming straight from the horse's mouth about what is going on. I can do better. I can definitely do more of that. My team, director of construction, director of services, superintendents, project managers, they're out there all the time connecting. That sends a message, right? Because it's always about, to me, leaders always establish their priorities about where they spend their time. And if you're spending your time talking to your people, you are establishing that priority that you are important, you matter to this organization, and we couldn't be who we are without you.
We show what matters to us by how we invest our time. If something's important to you, you are going to find a way to make time to do it.
Yeah. When you find those activities that give you energy as a leader, those activities that fill your own cup up, you are then able to give back to others that much more, right? Because you're feeding yourself, getting yourself that energy, and that just makes you that much better of a human being, and it makes you that much better of a leader. I've heard you talk about in your podcast a few times. You talk about success and what does definition of success, and I think that's every individual has to. That's one of your own. When you talk about what are your own personal core values, it's what's your own personal definition of success, and the only way that you can do that is that you can't be a different person professionally than personally. It's all the same. And I've never met someone that if they improve themselves professionally, that doesn't carry over into being a better spouse, a better parent, a better friend, right? We're human beings. And so all that stuff ties together within one. And so it's work. It's not more important than your family, but it is important because it gives an individual a sense of value and it makes them believe that they're a contributing factor. When we talk about making people the best version of themselves, we can do that professionally, right? As they can be the best version of themselves. And when someone is being the best version of themselves professionally, usually that carries over into their personal life. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, yeah, you know what? I'm a better father because of some of the stuff that we're doing here at work. Over a 6-month period, we put every one of our frontline leaders. We're talking general superintendents, project managers, and foremen, and lead service techs through a course. So every other week, it was called Winning Culture, but it was all about like leadership development, treating people with respect, how to talk to people that talked about how they were able to take those same concepts and take them back home to their family. And if you can take what you're doing at work and improve there, and then improve your relationships in your personal life, again, talk about winning. You talk about the best version of yourselves, and then really fulfilling what is the true purpose of life, which is to make others better and allow others to find their purpose.
I could not have said it any better than what you just laid out so beautifully, because I talk about winning at work and at home. And the reason that I talk about it in that way is because typically when we talk about work-life balance, or we think about work-life balance type issues, there's an assumption that the thing that needs to be fixed is at home. You need to spend more time with your family or do this and that. And that's not always the case. Like you said, if you become a better communicator at work, guess what? You become a better communicator in your whole life. That's a key note when we think about winning at work and at home. And I think you've already addressed that question in terms of how you would define winning at work and at home. But it's one of the things you mentioned a little bit earlier was finding activities that refill your cup. I've said this on the podcast before, is that the most selfish thing you can do is not take care of yourself. And part of taking care of yourself is finding those activities that can refill your cup. If you don't find those activities, then you'll continue to pour out, and then you'll be burnt out and empty. And you're not going to be good for your organization. You're not going to be good for yourself. You're not going to be good for your family, and you will not be good for your community.
Yeah, James, you're spot on. I had a physician telling me once, probably in the last 5 or 6 years, I think I was getting my yearly physical, and she said, yeah, your numbers are pretty good, right? And I said, I try to eat right. It doesn't always work out. And when you talk about hobbies, my hobby is working out. It started back when I was in the Marine Corps, and it just carried on. And for me, that is what fills my cup. And I was talking to my physician about that and saying, I do work out a decent amount and everything. And I usually do it first thing in the morning. And I said, before anything else goes on. And she was the one that really broke that down to me. When you do that, she goes, you fill your cup up first thing in the morning. She goes, so what that allows you to do is you can now give for the rest of your day. Now, unfortunately, eventually that cup runs out throughout the day. And unfortunately, a lot of times when you're going back home, your cup is out, right? And you walk in and you got the kids are going 100 different directions. You got the spouse is wanting something else from you because they had a rough day. That's when you really have to dig deep, right? You talk about being a leader at home and at work, and that's when you've got to get that emotional discipline in check and be the spouse that you need to be the parent that you need to be.
Part of the key is having situational and emotional awareness that your cup is running empty when you're home and in that moment. When your spouse asks you a question, a harmless question, your initial response might not verbalize anything. It may just be your facial expressions. It may just be the energy that you're giving off, but you go from 0 to 100 really quickly. It's having the awareness to say, wait a minute, why am I responding this way? What am I doing? And when you are aware, you have the ability to take that step back. And it could be even saying, honey, can we talk about this in 30 minutes? Give me 30 minutes to sit down and get myself together.
You're spot on, James. I think, first of all, like you said, it's about recognizing it. right? Knowing when you're like on that edge, right? And that's a maturity piece. Where I'm at today versus 5, 6, 7 years ago is much different. It's become an intentional practice about. I love the phrase "control what you control," and, and that you have choices. I think I had this discussion just the other day with talking about investing in people. We do a training program for pre-apprentices, and I try to always talk to them for a little bit of it. And so we've got eight young men in our class, and one of the things I talk to them about is choices. I ask them, "Do you have a choice in everything you do?" And some of them will immediately say, "Yeah, I always have a choice." Some will be like, "I don't have a choice. Sometimes I have to do things." And through the discussion, usually where I get to is I said, "Okay, do you have to pay your taxes?" And they're like, "Yeah, you don't have a choice. You have to pay your taxes." And I'm like, "That's not true. You have a choice. You just don't like the consequences." My point is you all have choices in life to make. And one of those choices is what goes on up in your head and what you control and how you react to things and how you respond to things. And when that becomes something always playing in your head, it's amazing how many times you can catch yourself from having a reaction to something versus you take a breath, understand that that was a harmless question to your point before, and let me respond appropriately. And wow, you talk about saving yourself some heartache in life, both as much professionally and as personally, when you can react like that. So that's for me. Control what you control, and you have choices. When you have all that, you can make the right choice by giving yourself space.
Yeah, no, that is beautiful. So as we think about wrapping our time together up, if there was one underlying theme or action you want listeners to walk away with, what would that be?
It's always about your personal leadership philosophy, and have you thought about that? And if you haven't thought about that, you need to take some time to do that, because that really defines not only who you are as a human being, but it also allows you to think about, what do I want out of my time in this world? Because it's not a long time. And so if you can really hone in on saying, this is what I believe, my heart and soul, this is what I believe, this is my personal leadership philosophy, my personal values, this is what I stand for, that's going to really help you make some decisions in life, personally and professionally. And that's what allows you to define what success is for you, and then have a fulfilling life. Because I think that's what success is a personally fulfilling life. Notice I didn't say happy all the time, but fulfilling. Those are very different emotions. And I think to be fulfilled, you've got to understand what does fill your cup up.
Okay. Russ, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation. I know that the podcast audience is going to enjoy this as well. Appreciate you coming on the show. If someone wants to contact you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on that. I probably look at that 2, 3 times a day. I love connecting with different people. You never know where something may lead.
I do like to provide one last opportunity where we'll flip the script and you have the opportunity to ask me one question. What question do you have for me?
So if you had to lay out what you consider your personal leadership philosophy or even your personal core values, what would they be? Describe James Bryant in 3 to 5 bullets, 3 to 5 words, however you want to say that. What would they be?
Good question. I believe it's my responsibility to use the gifts God has given me to connect, equip, and empower the people God directs in my path.
That's powerful, man. Well, I think that if you or me or anybody that listens to this podcast frames up the way they approach life in that manner, we'll be doing all right.
Russ, I really do appreciate you. And I'm going to end this podcast episode like I end every episode, and that's this. Many people know what to do. Fewer people know how to do it. And there's a select group of people that follow through and do it. And they're living the life of their dreams, and they're helping other people do that as well. And Russ, I want to thank you for being part of that select few.